Okay, good morning. Good morning. I am going to share my presentation about Richard Allen. Richard Allen, the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Might you will put the first slide up. Okay. Bishop Allen, he was a minister, writer, educator, abolitionist, humanitarian, and civil rights leader, to name a few. Bishop Allen founded the African Methodist Episcopal Church. He was born February 14th, 1760, and he died in 1831. He was a minister and the first elected and consecrated bishop of the AME Church. He was born into slavery and bought his freedom at the age of 17 for $2,000. He founded the African Methodist Episcopal Church in 1816, and the church has a very unique history as it was not founded on religious basis, but on social justice and race. Because of race rather than theological differences, this makes the AME Church stand out. Now, since its beginning in 1816 to the present time, the AME Church has worked to minister to the spiritual, physical, emotional, intellectual, and environment of people using a liberation gospel. What is it? It's Black liberation gospel. And the core of Black liberation gospel is an effort in a white-dominated society in which Blacks have been deemed as evil to make gospel, the good news, relevant to the life, struggle of Africans and Black people, and to help Black people learn to love themselves. It is an attempt to teach people how to be both unapologetically Black and Christian at the same time. The AME Church is a connectional church, which means that they share the same call to worship, the same structure, the same doctrine and discipline. In addition to being a connectional church, Bishop Allen felt that education was a major component of liberation, because when the church first began, most people were illiterate and uneducated. So he felt that education was important, and the AME Church gave a voice to troubling times during the Reconstruction and the bitter segregation. In the beginning, it was very difficult for the African Methodist Episcopal Church with all kinds of barriers and things that we actually experience today. So just a little background about the AME Church. I will say that education is very important, and we have at least 19 colleges and universities started by the AME Church. Next slide, please.
Richard Allen is an American hero.
He was a pioneer, and he blazed a trail for future generations to follow.
He was the first African-American leader to lead through nonviolence.
Richard Allen was born in 1760, a slave to Benjamin Chew of Philadelphia. When he was 7 years old, Chew separated Allen from his family and sold him to Stokely Sturgis in Delaware.
Your mother has already been sold. You've been separated from beloved family members. You're working long, grueling days. You look around you and all you see is slavery and bondage and hardship.
At age 17, he joined the Methodist Society, which met in the woods around the Sturgis farm.
That was really the foundational moment in his life when he meets these Methodist ministers who are, going through Delaware and preaching the gospel, and his life is converted. He's literally changed.
The explanation of scriptures helped inform his understanding of who he was as a man. God certainly didn't make him to be bound.
When he was 26, Allen and his brother purchased their freedom, agreeing to pay $2,000 over 5 years. Allen traveled, first to Radnor, and then to Philadelphia, where he became the early morning preacher at St. George's United Methodist Church.
The Methodist Church was still very equal in the way that it treated everyone. It was not uncommon to find a black slave, for example, preaching to white slave owners.
His presence and message brought in many new members. As Allen's following grew, white church leaders began segregating African Americans in the balcony during services.
He marches to the pews that he thinks he belongs in, and one of the white leaders starts walking down the aisle to where Absalom Jones, the senior member of the black community, is praying on his knees, and he says, get up, you go to the back of the church. You don't belong here. And Allen is watching this from the side. If he tells Absalom Jones to get up and white parishioners don't stop him, we leave. If he tells Absalom Jones to get up and white parishioners say, sit down, he's equal, we stay.
But the white parishioners were silent, and Allen and Jones led the black congregation out of St. George's.
Walking out of St. George's Church is the beginning of civil rights movements in American society.
That was really the moment that Allen wanted and had been waiting for.
Another critical moment occurred in the summer of 1793, when Philadelphia found itself in the grip of a devastating yellow fever epidemic. More than 10% of the city's people died, half the population left, and Allen mobilized black Philadelphians as the foot soldiers in the war against the epidemic.
They looked at it as an opportunity to show our responsibility as citizens, our civic duty.
Allen had a relationship with Benjamin Rush, the city's leading physician, who assured him that caring for those infected with yellow fever would improve the standing of African Americans in the city.
Once the fever passed, publisher Matthew Carey printed his account of the yellow fever outbreak. He charged black Philadelphians with theft and extortion. Allen and Absalom Jones were outraged, and they went on the offense, printing a detailed rebuttal to Carey's account.
They put together the first copywritten book by African Americans in this country.
Richard Allen understood that you've got to put things down in writing, and that if it's not written, then it did not happen.
A year after the fever nearly destroyed Philadelphia, Allen opened the doors of his own church at 6th and Lombard Streets, the Bethel Church.
The idea of a free, independent African church under its own control was a very powerful symbol that many blacks throughout the country latched onto, which is also what made it a threat. For those who were bound to the institution of slavery, the last thing you wanted was somebody like Richard Allen out there meeting behind closed doors and nobody knew what he was saying.
Allen would use his church to further the cause of equality, operating a station on the Underground Railroad and supporting civic associations to help blacks deal with an increasingly hostile and racist America.
By the early 19th century, powerful forces were trying to undermine Richard Allen. Slavery is expanding in the South, and slaveholding interests are trying to resettle free blacks like Allen in African colonies.
White Methodists continued to claim ownership and control over Allen's congregation until 1816, when the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that Allen's church would remain independent. That same year, Allen united 5 congregations to create the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the first autonomous African American religious denomination in the United States.
This is not simply a white man's republic. No one else And the white founding group of Washington, Madison, Adams is talking in those terms. That's why Allen's so important. He comes along and pierces their thoughts and shows them, at least tries to show them, that this is a contradiction, that you can't have an empire of liberty without black freedom.
Richard Allen died in 1831. His dream for equality and freedom still burning, but unrealized. A sarcophagus containing his coffin, together with his wife, Sarah Bass Allen, is on display in the museum at the Mother Bethel AME Church in Philadelphia.
Next slide.
When I think about Richard Allen, the person who kind of comes to mind is, if you've ever heard Oprah Winfrey talk about the fact that she always felt that she was destined for greatness. And you get that same feeling when you think about Richard Allen. I mean, that you don't get the sense that, this is a kid who's happens to be a slave or enslaved, who kind of thought that all of his life, would be in slavery, but that you get a sense that from the very beginning, he just thought that there was just something, much greater for him. I mean, every step along the way, he pushes the boundaries. Now, some people would have just been happy with buying their freedom like he did. In the early 20s, I'm free from slavery. Let me just retire to a quiet life. But that wasn't good enough. He helps found the Free African Society, this benevolent organization, which is just groundbreaking at the time. And, that's not good enough. He leads a movement to start America's, first independent black denomination in the country. And even that's not, good enough for Allen. I mean, he's continually pushing the boundaries. He expanded to an international relationship. He's entertaining the ambassador of Haiti. I mean, throughout his life, when you think that he should have been satisfied, he's never satisfied. He's always pushing. Even with the AME Church's founding, there were other Black Methodist churches that started at the same time, other Black denominations, but none grew as fast or as large as the AME Church. And that holds true to this day. That's not said to try to kind of, talk about the AME Church in any other way, except to say that that's a part of Allen's spirit, that it has always tried to go in places where it was not.
Next.
Mother Bethel, when it was founded, once it was actually dedicated in 1794, that was really kind of the beginning. It didn't totally become free until 1816 with the state Supreme Court ruling that basically told St. George's and the Methodist Church to just leave the church alone. So in between those years, there were all of these little struggles, depending on who the pastor was at St. George's. It could be a great relationship or it could just be this real tense relationship. And at one point, one of the pastors let Richard Allen know that he was coming and he was going to preach on that Sunday. And so Richard Allen and the others actually put another preacher in the pulpit before he arrived. And when he arrived, I mean, this is like really the world's first sit-in. We talk about the 60s and the sit-ins. But when he arrived, Richard Allen and the other members actually instructed the people to fill the aisles. So the church was already packed, and this worship is going on. And this pastor's in the back trying to get to the pulpit. But the people literally just barricaded, themselves through the aisles, through the pews. He's trying to climb over. I mean, you can just kind of imagine the scene, and he's in the back screaming, at the top of his lungs that this man has stolen my appointment to preach, and the guy in the pulpit is just preaching anyhow. And I mean, it's just this great scene. But I mean, again, the audacity, of Black people in the 1790s and early 1800s to do this to any white person. I mean, to me, it just that blows me away.
And Reverend Tyler is the present pastor at Mother Bethel in Philadelphia. Today, the African Methodist Episcopal Church has membership in 20 Episcopal districts in 31 countries and on 5 continents. The work of the church is administered by bishops. And every year we meet every 4 years, and this is a book of the discipline and doctrine of the AME Church. So every year we meet at General Conference to manage the business of the church. Next. This is the structure of the AME Church. We have the General Conference, the Judicial Council, annual conferences. Every year, all 20 districts have annual conferences to give account of their yearly work. Next, please. African Methodist Church, sometimes you hear the word AME, but African is the word means that the church was organized by people of African descent and heritage. Methodist meaning that it provides an orderly system of rules and regulations and places emphasis on plain and simple gospel. When Richard Allen and Absalom Jones and the others left St. George Church and the United Methodist Church, they felt that the structure would be applicable and good for the people. Episcopal refers to the form of government under which the church operates. It means that the church is governed by the bishops. Our motto is God our Father, Christ our Redeemer, the Holy Spirit our Comforter, and humankind our family. We changed our motto about 8, maybe 10 years ago, where it says humankind. It used to be mankind. So we updated that to humankind, our family. Next, please. As stated earlier, the African Methodist Episcopal Church is located in has 20 districts and is located all over the world, including India, Africa, South Africa, West Africa. Okay, and under each district, there are different churches. For example, the first district includes Mother Bethel, Philadelphia, New England, Western New York. So every district has so many churches that they operate under. Next, please. Okay, let's take that one back. Let's take that one off, please. And let's play, if you all remember in 2015, there was a shooting at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. Just going to show you all a clip of that. Not only is the AME Church a church of justice and fairness, but also a church of forgiveness.
Many of these speeches saying this kind of mass violence doesn't. We want to turn right to Pierre Thomas this evening. And Pierre, we heard the president say today that he's given too many of these speeches saying this kind of mass violence doesn't happen in other advanced countries, saying it's time for a solution. So, Pierre, what are your sources telling you tonight about the suspect who's now on his way back here to Charleston?
David, senior law enforcement officials say so far the evidence suggests Ruth acted alone. David, you can see here tonight police searching Ruth's last known address with a heavy focus on computers and phones he's been recently using. While there's no evidence of a broad conspiracy, they want to see if he was influenced by hate groups or any specific individuals. In the next 24 hours, FBI and state investigators.
Is that the one I sent you? It should be about
this
people
case, David,
praying.
nothing will be left to chance.
Yeah, so many questions unanswered tonight, Pierre. Thanks to you as well. We want to turn right to Pierre.
You continue playing that, Martha?
I'm sorry?
Would you continue playing that, please?
That's it.
From the beginning.
It's only 48 seconds.
Okay, well, the one that I wanted you all to see, it was, yes, President Obama was at the funeral, but the clip that I wanted to share was a clip of Blacks and white people coming together, praying and saying that the shooting was not going to separate them, that they were going to support each other And the last part of the clip, it showed that there were white women and white people and Black people coming together, praying for the people. What happened is that there were 9 people in prayer meeting, and this young white man came in and killed all of them, including the pastor. The clip also shows that one of the persons who were killed was a librarian. And when they had the funeral, all of the libraries in Charleston, South Carolina were closed to show honor of the librarian. Also, our church did a card ministry, and all of those who wanted to volunteer to send cards of sympathy and encouragement to the families of the 9 did so. I submitted my name, and thanks be to God, I actually was connected with the librarian's family who were killed, and to send words of encouragement. Again, Richard Allen is the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. His legacy continued to evolve. It didn't just stop with slavery. We have a lot of AMEs who are famous, like Rosa Parks was AME, Gwen Ifill AME. So there's a lot of people who were AMEs. Brown versus the Board of Education. The person was a AME. For resources, there is a book called Freedom's Prophet, Bishop Allen and the AME Church. And there are other resources to refer to some of the things that the AME Church did. Today, the AME Church is proud to continue, especially with voting rights and civil rights, and trusting God to do the things that we need to do. Thank you. Oh, show my last slide, please. I'm proud to be AME. Hashtag I am AME. Thank you.
Oh, Josephine, that was wonderful. I never knew the history of how the church was founded, so that was great.
Thank you.
Mrs. Anderson, can you tell us about some of the AME churches in the Stamford area?
Oh, absolutely. As I stated, we're in the 1st district, and we have Bethel Greenwich, Bethel Stamford, and Reverend Dr. Jackson is the pastor here in Stamford. And again, he's very active in the community. The turkeys, the coats, the books. We partner with him a lot with the bookmobile during the summertime. So Stamford AME Church, we have Bethel AME Church, who I'm a proud member, active member of Bethel AME Church in Norwalk, Connecticut, where Reverend Dr. Richard Wesley Clark is my pastor. We have Bethel Springfield, we have Bethel New Haven, and Bethel means House of God. So, and it goes on in Springfield and Boston,
Right.
and there are streets named after Bishop Allen in different
Right.
places.
Wow.
Anytime there's and the other thing, that every AME church have a social action group. We believe in God, the Bible, but we believe in standing up for your rights and helping other people. So once you get off your knees and from prayer, you have to get up and have some action. And everyone serve and do things in different ways. We have the evangelist department, we have a YPD department, we have the lay organization, and it's sole responsibility of the lay organization of the African Methodist Episcopal Church is to teach the history of Bishop Allen. Lest we forget our history, lest we forget the backs that we stand on. Voting to us is very sacred because we know that it was earned through lynching, prayer, being spat on, so many different things. So to vote is just an honor and it's very sacred. Yeah. We really don't have as much time to go into, but it just is, you know, all the churches, everyone have their own thing. But what I really love about the AME Church is that social action, dealing with social action and trusting God. Any other questions? I do hope you all learned something about
I did.
AME Church. Oh, and my bishop is Bishop McAllister. We just got a new bishop. All the bishops serve for 8 years in each district. And at the age of 75, they have to retire according to our discipline, the laws that we do every 4 years. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amy said definitely not aware of this church. Cool. Yeah, so this is, I think a lot of us are walking away with a lot more knowledge. Thank you. And Melanie, is there a space open on Tuesday for someone if they want to, or is it filled?
No, it's not filled. So if anybody wants to do it, it's at 9:30 on Tuesday.
All right, just let Melanie know.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great